Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Hello.
All right. Well, it looks like it's 3 o'clock. So I'm going to call the meeting to order, and I'm going to take a roll call here. Commissioner Dave Cahill,
Here.
Commissioner Barbara McKenzie,
Here.
Commission Vice Chair Thomas Hauser,
Here.
and Commission Chair Deborah Doyle.
Here.
First thing I wanted to address is I know there was some concern about the Brown Act, given the fact that we're now down 2 members on the full commission. So I wanted to make an announcement that we have reached out to our attorney and have received the following message. The Finance Committee meeting will be a meeting authorized by this chapter because it will be a duly noticed meeting of a standing committee that will be open to the public. That is, it will be a meeting conducted in accordance with the Brown Act. Our attorney went on to say, I believe this is fine so long as the discussion is only about items on the posted agenda and no commission members other than Finance Committee members are present. Now, my understanding of that is that, of course, at any time, another member of the commission can listen in to the call, but they're not allowed to participate. Is that, Deborah, is that your understanding as well?
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay, great. And I want to announce that pursuant to California Government Code Section 54953, all votes during this teleconference meeting shall be taken by roll call. So I'm going to move on to item 3, public appearances. And this would be members of the public who wish to address the commission regarding matters not on the agenda. Do we have any members of the public present who would like to address the commission? Jen, did you receive any emails or other communications from members of the public who were asking that you share that during this committee meeting?
I have not received any written comments for this meeting.
Okay, then I'm going to suggest that we move on very quickly to item 4.1. And in just a moment, I'm going to turn things over to Myrna, but wanted to just make a couple of introductory remarks. And I think that we should plan to go through the review of the financials in fairly short order. From a revenue perspective, just a reminder that we will not be getting our second property tax payment until April. We did receive more than half of what we had budgeted in December. There's question about to what extent that was because people prepaid the full year, or to what extent it might have been because total property tax revenues will run higher. We will know that once we get the April figures. In terms of sales tax, we have 6 months of reporting, so we would expect to be at about 50% of budget, and I was pleased to see that we're running ahead at 54.9% of what we had budgeted. That's great. And just a reminder that for expenses, especially those that run on a more or less straight line basis, we're 8 months into the year, so we would expect to be at about 67%. So with that intro, Myrna, could you just give us a quick review on the summary, and then we'll take any questions or concerns from the members of the committee. And you're on mute.
Essentially, what is new here in compared to the January reports is that the sales tax receipts came in February at 1.6 million. And that, as you know, sales tax receipts are 2 months lag. So these represent the holidays. And so normally the month of February receipts are on the higher end. So this looks good. Projecting out that we can make an assumption that if we get $1.2 million for the remaining months, that we could still come in above our budgeted number of 14.4 million. So we could be experiencing a budget surplus related to the sales tax. And as Chair Elkind mentioned, we're looking forward to the second installment of property tax in April. And you will see, gosh, you won't see those until May. But things are looking fine for our revenue to be on target and even performing a little better than that. Regarding expenditures, as you can see, salaries and benefits are combined, and salaries tend to run very close to the where we are with the year. And benefits, though we continue to see a savings, that's why you see a 51.3% savings there. So I anticipate seeing a savings still in benefits by the end of the year. Other than that, we have where we will be within budget on the expenditure side. So I'm open to any questions.
Anybody? Yes, Barbara, go ahead. You're on mute.
Yes. Thank you for your report, CFO Lopez. I have one overall question, and then I have a number of small ones I think I can go through real quickly. My overall question is, with this budget, we gave direction to the director and authority to our director to move money around within divisions, as I understand it. And is there any way of seeing on these reports a reflection of that happening or not happening? Or
At this time, I am not aware that funds have been transferred within divisions. Each division in the mid-year review, I met with individually and said that they would be within their division budget that was approved for them at the beginning of the fiscal year. So I don't anticipate any movement between divisions.
Okay, thank you for that. I don't think we've looked into that before. So it was just an overall question. Let me go quickly through a couple of things. On page 3, on the special fund activity statement, at the bottom, I noticed that we now have a fund balance committed to health reimbursement accounts. And I believe that's a new line item I've never seen before. And I wondered where that health savings account designation used to show up.
Where it used to show up. I see what you're saying. I have not delved into this, but I have seen it, that it's there. I can look further in the past. I don't know when this was adopted. I know that so I don't know if this reserve was adopted in the current last fiscal year.
I think, we've had these for a while, the health reimbursement accounts, but they haven't shown in this particular place. So yeah, maybe next month you can let us know.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
We'll follow up.
Thank you.
I do notice that it was on last month's report also.
Right, but it's new. well, yeah, this month and last month. On page, this page isn't numbered. The other contract services, I see that we're reimbursing folks to go, the sheriff's staff, and they're all kind of listed differently, but it looks like inmate services, ESL classes, and CLL classes. Is that a new, something new that we're doing?
This is in other contract services.
Yeah. Mhm.
Let's see. So the line,
Looking at the summary page, Barbara, the one that,
It's called, that's the one that's currently showing there.
okay. So maybe Anne can speak to this a little bit more, but the library provides services to the jail, to the county jail. And I know that it provides programming and services. So I'm not sure why it says sheriff's contract staff.
We contract with staff, persons who have been cleared by the sheriff's office to go into the jails and provide these ESL classes and continuing education classes. So it's not our staff who are doing it, but people that we've contracted with to provide this service for us.
So this is not new. It just happens to show up on this report.
Yep.
Thank you. And then very quickly on page 9, under property tax, it looks there at the category 50755 PERS. It looks like it's just 23% of the budget. And I just wonder if I'm reading that correctly.
Yes, this is where it leads back to my comment on the summary page, is that benefits are budgeted at a higher rate than our actual costs. And this
Okay.
is the line item that I'm referring to.
Okay, so that was just budgeted too high or higher than.
Yes.
And then my very last question is on page 12, under donations, interest, and transfers. And the reason I'm asking about this is because I just came out of a Friends of the Library meeting. And I noticed that under Rohnert Park, there's a beginning cash balance of $93,590 and a current balance of $117,797. I'm just wondering, the Friends continue to write checks for requests made by the branch manager. Does this just show that the expenses haven't quite linked up with the money yet? Because otherwise I don't know why we would have that kind of cash balance.
Yes, so right now we are reconciling, well, I wouldn't call it reconciling, and better is that if you notice on this page above, we have run into a budget, the $37,500 has been budgeted in terms of expenditures. And we have met that ceiling. And so we are working with our division managers to review some invoices that have come in. And we may have to go to the commission to request additional budget authority so that we can continue to move ahead with our invoices, programming, expenditures, et cetera, in these programs.
Okay, so this money has
To
been
continue to draw down. So we've spent,
Yeah.
we've spent $37,500 according to this budget. Again, I'm having conversations and we may need to ask for additional budget authority.
Thank you so much.
I'm sorry, Myrna, could you clarify what are you referring to specifically with the 37,500?
So if you're on page 12 and
Yes,
you go towards the left-hand side of the spreadsheet, there's an adjusted budget. As you can see, at the bottom, you'll see what the total budget expenditures are, and it's 37.5.
Yes.
So that is what has the authority. We can only spend up to $37,500.
From gifts and donations?
Yes,
Okay, all right, so it's of gifts and donations that are received, currently the budget only allocates 37.5 thousand to be spent.
Mhm, right.
Okay, good. Barbara, did you have any other questions?
That's it. Thank you.
Okay, you can, if you'd put your hand down, great, thank you. I appreciate, as always, by the way, Barbara, your close scrutiny of these reports. It's great to have you on the committee. Thank you. Do we have any other questions about any items, large or small, on this month's financial reports? Seems to me that the big picture continues along the same trend that we've seen. We're running considerably below budget, especially in terms of our capital expenditures, but also in terms of our salaries and benefits. And so I'm expecting that although we had budgeted a significant surplus for a significant deficit for the current year, I don't think we're going to be anywhere near that amount as we get to year end, but I'm sure we'll be hearing more about that at the budget workshop. Okay, I'm going to suggest we move on to item 4.2. And so, Myrna, this is you, please. If you could give us updates on fund balances committed to capital improvement and maintenance. And also, I know you've been working with your team on coding on an ongoing basis. If you could please update us on those areas.
Sure. So we are in the throes of budget for fiscal year 22-23. And the direction from the Finance Committee has been to fully implement the fund balance policy. So that includes a capital improvement program and reserves for maintenance and repair for information technology resources and facilities. And so this will be part of the budget for next fiscal year. I anticipate to prepare for that to come before the Finance Committee and the Commission, so to start implementing that even this fiscal year, so it's already in the queue for July 1. So that's the update right now.
Okay, and I know you found when you started working here that there were some coding issues. What have you been able to accomplish, and what do you see ahead for the team in that area?
Sure, I think you'll will start seeing some of those, the impact of starting to make corrections in coding in the March reports. So in April, you'll see those in our reports. And so I've kicked off and worked with staff to start implementing those corrections. So you'll start seeing them next month.
Oh,
And, in addition to that, initiated the process for year-end close, to prepare for year-end close, which helps with the audits already for the end of this fiscal year. That requires some adjustments prior to the year-end close, which is a normal, regular process.
yeah, that's great. So I guess a question that I have for you is, in the financial reports that we'll see next month, is there anything that you can do to kind of make it easy for us in terms of calling out where there are adjustments that have been made?
what I can do, well, mainly the ones that you all see are those at the other contract services.
Yeah.
And so you'll notice that some of the items are will be removed from that list to
Okay.
the correct. So that's where you'll be seeing changes that come to you. Others are really tiny, but you know, are not really tiny. I just say small. You know, they don't raise up to the level of what you'll be seeing or reported to you, like the $50,000 and above report. So those are being done, and you can see them. Perhaps you'll see them in the detailed schedules where Commissioner McKenzie has been, you know, looking at details. And I'll do my best to share with you where they are, the bigger ones where you'll actually see a difference.
It's great for us to remember that it will be significantly in other contract services. And I guess when the reports go out, if you could just give us a heads up so we know where to look and don't have to comb through the reports at every line item, that would be helpful. Any other questions, concerns, comments regarding item 4.2? Barbara, I see your hand.
It's just a quick question. I'm sure you already covered this, Myrna, but you mentioned in the capital maintenance, what are we calling capital improvement and maintenance fund? You mentioned facilities and technology, that you're also including replacement vehicles. I'm assuming, but just wanted to check.
Yes, we are. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks.
Good. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Okay, we're on to 4.3. And of course, at our most recent commission meeting, we did approve the new policy regarding the allocation of major revenue sources. Myrna, what can you tell us about implementation to date and upcoming?
You will see the allocation process following the policy. So I will be explaining that, how I arrived to the ratios in a transmittal memo to the commission. So my hope is to be transparent in that process and how the policy was applied. It hasn't been any real issues, but I will explain our thought process and on implementing the policy.
And that's, if I'm understanding correctly, that's obviously going to depend on your projections for property tax revenue and sales tax revenue for the coming year and what the proportion of each of them is expected to be. Is that right?
That's correct. Yes, I'll give you a heads up. It's not going to be very much different of the ratios that you've seen this fiscal year.
Okay. Well, that's great. And I know that first of all, I know you've been doing work behind the scenes, reaching out to colleagues in other government agencies in Sonoma to get their perspective on what they expect property and sales tax will be. And I think it would be helpful when we do get to the budget workshop, if you just be prepared to talk briefly as to, why you have confidence in the numbers based on the sources that you've referenced.
Yes, of course.
Okay. Any other comments or questions about this item? All right, well, I'm going to go on to 4.4. We are eager to hear about the budget workshop coming up. This is, it's a week from Friday, right? April 1st. How's it going?
Well, we have a lot of new things that in your budget, things that the commission has been working toward. I mentioned the fund balance policy, the allocation policy. A lot of work that you've already been have done this fiscal year that have impacts for next fiscal year. So to mention, labor negotiations, for example, and the reimagining plan, of course. And so we will be highlighting all of those things on April 1st at the workshop.
Really excited to see that. I'm going to just ask the members of the committee, do you have any questions for Myrna or Ann about what we're going to see at the budget workshop? Barbara.
Yeah, I was just wondering if we'll be hearing from the division directors making comments about their particular divisions, the requests and their forecasts for the future and that kind of thing.
Yes, so a big change in the presentation itself is that the division manager, we're going back to a format that has been implemented in the past, where division managers get to speak on their budget, their goals for next fiscal year, and all under the framework and auspices of the reimagining plan and accomplishments under Measure Y. Since April is our 5th year anniversary of collecting Measure Y and spending funds on library services.
Okay, thank you. Dave, I see you've got a hand up.
Yes, Ann, I wondered how are you going to be handling the Sunday hours issue at the workshop, or will it be that be later in the cycle?
Ann, would you like to address that?
Yes, we're still working through that, but we have an idea that we think will be palatable to all concerned. And so we'll be bringing that forward at the budget workshop.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yeah, that will be wonderful. Other questions about the budget workshop? So I'm really looking forward to it. Guys, I have a question, and Myrna, I'm not sure if this is best for you or for Ann, or possibly I see Ray is also on the call, but we've talked in the past about how, I guess for some people, they just think of the budget as a bunch of numbers, but really, I think it's the clearest representation of the strategic priorities of the library. And, obviously, there's a lot of interest in seeing how the budget is going to align with the reimagining plan and also support the goals of Measure Y. I know that there's a certain amount of communication that we do when we have a public meeting like the budget workshop. I'm just wondering if you could, for the benefit of the committee, if you could just review for us what kind of communication and outreach effort there is, so that people who are interested in a level of detail have the opportunity to listen in.
Sure. I mean, we actually do a very robust outreach for all of our meetings. And since Ray is here, I'd like if you could jump in here and help us out with some of the details about what this team does.
Not hearing you yet, Ray.
Thank you. You missed my long introduction and hello to everyone, so I won't repeat it. After this was brought up at the commission meeting a few weeks ago, I doubled back with our marketing team and with Jen to make sure that we were reaching out to the same folks that I thought we were. We did review the list. We made a couple of updates to it. But essentially what happens is that the notice of the meeting goes out to every city hall in Sonoma County. So that's all 9, plus the county admin center, and then every major media outlet. There might be a few PTA newsletters and things like that that aren't reached, but every adjudicated newspaper and some of the radio stations all get notices about this. And then there's people who sign up for a list to be notified, and Jen sends out all those folks. So it's pretty widely noticed. The meeting agendas are printed and posted at every library branch. So if you can imagine those few days before the meeting, every single person who walks into a library has an opportunity to look at that meeting notice as well.
Well, that's great, and I'm glad to hear that. I'm gonna ask a question which doesn't relate to me personally because I don't really use social media, but for those of our patrons who do, does our communication process include, for example, Facebook or Nextdoor or any of the other the multitude of social media that I'm sure I'm completely unaware of?
Currently, it doesn't. I've been thinking about the suggestion that I heard a few weeks ago. We could certainly do that as your communications manager. My recommendation would be to have a more strategic conversation about when we invite people to give input. And we want people to be able to give input at a point in the process where they can make a difference. I don't know exactly when that is, but if it's just a few weeks before potential adoption of the budget, I'm not sure. There's online budget simulation tools that public agencies use. If we were to start just publicizing the commission and finance committee and other committees like that on social media, that would not be a difficult ask. And I'll certainly wait to hear from the director on that.
Yeah, I don't have an opinion. I was just curious about doing it. I think I was glad to hear about the robust number of outlets that you are utilizing, and I think that's great. And I guess, from the perspective of when people have an opportunity to make an impact, really it was during the reimagining plan, right? I mean, if we're doing a budget that's in line with what we learned during the reimagining plan, then we've already undertaken a robust effort at a time when it could have the most impact. So I don't have a specific ask. I don't know if I just was curious.
If I could add one more thing.
Sure.
Committee Chair Elkind, I've been fortunate enough to watch some of the sausage being made as far as this budget goes. I've been asked to weigh in on some of the presentation aspects of it. And you're going to see a lot. This is going to be a very impressive and very thorough budget presentation. We're going to talk a lot about the reimagining plan. We're going to talk a lot about Measure Y. We're going to talk about our values. And I think you're going to be really pleased.
Really looking
and so
forward.
The public.
Great. Okay, thanks so much, Ray. Appreciate it. Any other questions, comments, concerns related to the upcoming budget workshop?
Well, I do have a question. Since the reimagining plan was about a year ago, have you, and this is directed to staff mostly, but certainly to commission members as well. Have you had questions about how the reimagining plan is going to have an impact on the budget, or have you gotten suggestions from our communities about things that they would like to have in the budget? And no is a perfectly acceptable and understandable answer, but I just wondered if there was anything that had popped up.
I've not heard from members of the community. We, as a library staff, have been very mindful of the reimagining plan and the goals and how we can best implement that and continue to move things forward. So that's all I can tell you at this point.
And I think Commissioner Elkind also alluded to that. Every division manager has read that reimagining plan cover to cover multiple times in the last few weeks as we're preparing our budgets. And that input is very fresh and very relevant.
I think as we move forward, we need to make sure that the community is reminded about what was in the reimagining plan. I'm sure you're doing that, and I'm sure that's in the budget, but I think that that's really important to make sure that the community, it's not just the library staff, but that the community knows that that their needs are going to be met.
Sure.
Thanks, Deborah. Any other questions on this topic? Okay, I'm going to suggest we move on to item 4.5. And I'd like to say some things from an introductory perspective, and then I'm going to be quiet and ask for your comments or input. You know, it's been a month since we got the original report from Bartel. Obviously, very comprehensive, a lot of detail. In some ways, I felt almost too much, in the sense that it's really hard to distinguish the signal from the noise. It's a very complex area. But in reviewing it, I came away with a feeling, and I wanted to share with you the feeling that I came away with, and also the direction that I would be inclined to suggest we consider. But I'm only one person, and you all, I'm sure, have given this at least as much or more scrutiny and thought than I have. So what I'd like to do, and Jen, if you wouldn't mind, I'm going to try to lead us to a few specific pages. I'd like to start on the bottom of page 21, please. Yep, that's the one. And let me just apologize. I realize I'm picking and choosing here, but I'm trying to highlight the big picture message that came through to me. The target: have money in the bank to cover actuarial liability. And unfunded liability is money short of the target at the valuation date. I think this goes without saying, but it's important to keep in mind. Historically, we've had an unfunded liability, and I feel like our goal in providing meaningful financial oversight should be to close that gap and keep it closed on an ongoing basis. To me personally, having a sound and well-funded pension plan is an important part of what we as an institution can do to offer competitive compensation that will help us attract and retain the highest quality people. And the success of our organization depends on that. So I feel like we have an obligation to make sure that the pension plan is on a very sound financial footing. Now, that said, I didn't come away from the Bartel's presentation thinking, oh my gosh, things are terrible. In fact, they were somewhat better than I had anticipated. Jen, if you could please take us to the bottom of page 25. We know that historically, the library and just about every other public agency in California has been running with an unfunded liability. But a number of changes made over the last 10 years move us and other agencies in the direction of closing that gap. The new contribution policy that was implemented, a new amortization policy, reducing the discount rate. In other words, reducing the expectation of what future returns will be. All of these put the pension plan overall on a more conservative footing. And Jen, if you could please go to the top of page 26. The fact that overall CalPERS is going to be moving to a somewhat more conservative investment approach at the same time as they continue to lower the discount rate. All of those things led me to believe that, hey, you know, even if we do nothing, over time, there's a reasonable possibility that our unfunded liability will not grow out of hand, assuming that investment returns are more or less reasonable. But there's an awful lot of things we don't have control over. But there are some things that we do have control over. And I came away from my reading of this thinking that we should look to try to make some additional discretionary payments over the next few years to further reduce our unfunded liabilities and ensure that the pension plan is on a stable long-term footing. Now, there were a couple of approaches that were available. And Jen, at the bottom of page 41, please. One option was just increasing the amount that we pay directly to CalPERS. And while this certainly seemed like the simplest approach, I had some misgivings about it because what it really does is it continually readjusts the amortization schedule and continually adjusts the amount of money that we owe going forward, but doesn't give us control over how and when that happens. I came away, and I'm coming to the end of what I was going to say. Jen, bottom of page 42. That it would be more beneficial to us if we were to make, as we did for the OPEB trust, if we were to make a series of additional discretionary payments to a 115 pension trust. We have more flexibility in terms of how the monies are invested. These assets don't count for GASB accounting, which means that they don't change what CalPERS is doing to help us catch up. They're in addition to that. And finally, Jen, at the top of page 43, we decide if and how much money we want to transfer from the 115 trust into CalPERS. And if we were fortunate enough to reach a point where our pension was fully funded or overfunded, we actually have the option to withdraw money and reimburse the agency. So all that is to say, I came away feeling that it would be a benefit for us to look into, obviously we're going to need Myrna's help to do this, look into the possibility of making some additional discretionary payments to a 115 trust. Having said that, I'm going to stop talking, and I'd like to hear from each of you as far as what you took away from the Bartel report and how you feel about considering making additional discretionary payments. Dave, I see you've got a hand up. Please jump in.
Yeah, I was very reassured by the presentations on both of the funds that if we keep on going the way we are going, we're in good shape and our unfunded liabilities will be liquidated in an appropriate period of time. So I favor the do nothing policy. I don't think we should rattle any cages. I'm not really confident in a 115 trust, partly because the city of Santa Rosa was confronted with a similar offer, I think, last year from CalPERS, and they relied on a large group whose name I've forgotten. They're saying, nope, these are too risky and don't do it, so they didn't. Again, I have the clippings buried in my finance committee file. I'm willing to dig them out, but I just don't like the necessity of going this extra step unless it's really necessary, especially considering how unstable the financial markets may be over the next few months.
Okay, I'll, rather than respond, I'm going to hear from others and then I'll try to get back to you. Other thoughts on this? Tom, Deborah, Barbara?
I'll jump in. I'm big for paying down debt. I believe that we've gotten, everything we're seeing shows that we're in a very healthy financial situation right now. We have, large fund balances. I think it's a very appropriate use of some of our fund balance to pay down this debt. I was kind of in the camp of making extra payments. As you pointed out, Andy, it's just kind of like the simplest thing. You make a lot of good points about creating a separate trust. It does give us something else to have to manage in terms of, making more investment decisions. I mean, I'm not opposed to that. It does provide, more control on our part. It does create more responsibility on our part, I believe. I do want to point out, I mean, I know everybody knows this, but remember the 6.8% discount rate is being lowered. That's just the expectation of how much money they expect to make, on our funds. And who knows where we're going now with the world as it is. And if the funds that are currently invested in CalPERS don't hit 6.8%, it comes back to us. The employer pays the difference. So, there's some, added instability, I'd say, looking ahead than we even had, a few months ago with what's going on with the global markets and, who knows. But as a general, just a belief that I have, we talk about values, I believe in paying down debt. And so I would support that. And I just want to add one other kind of thought. And that is, as you point out on page 21, Andy, the target is to have money in the bank to cover actuarial liability, and in parentheses, it says past service. So this is for people who work for the library in the past. I don't know how to put dates on any of this, obviously. But if we do decide to make some extra contributions and using our current brand new allocation policy of what to charge to the different funds, under public services, collections, communication, and so forth, we're talking about property tax allocation of 55 to 67%, and Measure Y allocation of 33 to 45%. We have to think in some way about, because this is past service, we have to think about which fund or fund balance we take this money out of to put in the trust. I don't know how to do that, but I want to put it on record that we do need to be ultra careful about not using Measure Y funds inappropriately for that. Thank you.
Excellent point, and I will get back and comment on that. Tom, I see you've got a hand up.
I think that CalPERS is subtly telling us that we haven't been paying enough money and we need to pay more money because we believed all their expectations of high returns, et cetera, in a nice way so that they don't slander their board, et cetera. So I kind of think probably we should be putting more money into CalPERS, either directly or through the 115 trust. The question I have about a 115 trust is, what is the cost of it? Whenever you do one of these things, to have lawyers, investment advisors, et cetera, et cetera. So I think we need to look at that very carefully in terms of what's the cost that we're going to have to pay if you want to consider that. I just, we had a dog and pony show a year or two ago from CalPERS about putting more money in. And I think basically they're trying to be nice to everybody and say, hey, this is all screwed up and we need to fix it. We need more money here somehow.
Thank you.
And I also am someone who thinks that if we can, we should pay down debt. It's terrific that we're in a great position right now. But I do think that we should consider making some additional payments. I also think that CalPERS was sending a message that there are alternatives, and that if people are not as confident as they might be in the CalPERS investment scheme, that then the trust is a good place to put it. But I also agree with Commissioner Hauser that setting that up might cost us some money. So let's at least know what we're doing before we set it up and before we hand it off to the next the next group of commissioners, a task that they didn't volunteer for.
Actually, I have one other thought that I'd like to express. I don't have a lot of confidence in my ability to invest money and make decisions about how to invest it. I've put money into retirement accounts for years and years, and I've just been really lucky. It's my attitude. And I don't want to be on a board where I turn out not to be lucky.
Mm-hmm.
Understood. Well, I'm going to circle back and comment.
Mirna has her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mirna, you certainly have a voice worth hearing. Please tell us what you're thinking.
You're muted.
You're on mute.
Mirna.
I realize that Chair Elkind has some comments, so I could go after those comments. I just have a question.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, let me, I wanted to respond to a few things I heard. First of all, appreciate the fact that I think as a group, we've have a level of comfort and confidence in each other where we can just speak frankly and say what's on our mind. So thank you all for speaking up, even if you disagree with me. Dave, I'm going to refer to your point first. There's certainly, there is an attractiveness to doing nothing. And I will say that I agree with you that I came away feeling much more optimistic than I expected to prior to getting the Bartel report. What gives me some pause is that the projected unfunded liability for the year ending 2021, so a year ahead of where they actually reported, was only 10%. But for all the years previously, it had been closer to 20%. So what we were seeing is 1 year of spectacular market returns essentially cut our unfunded liability in half. And that was wonderful. As a recent retiree, I would love to feel like the market will continue to provide that high level of return, and I have no confidence that that's the case. I think, as Barbara was saying, we've got significant world events like the continuation of COVID and the war in Ukraine and rising oil and inflation, which tell me that the great market returns we had for that previous year, we cannot expect. And if in fact we have a year where returns are below the discount rate, below the expected rate of return, we're going to see that unfunded liability gap increase. So while I do think it would be possible to do nothing, I don't feel like that's the most prudent approach. Barbara raised an excellent question about where would the money come from? And I think this is something that Deborah and I discussed with Myrna and Ann. Given the complexity and the fact that the pensions do pay for benefits to people of varying employment histories, we felt that the safest path would be to use only property tax revenue. The challenge with that is that there may be a very limited amount of property tax revenue available to achieve that. Because if you, and Myrna and I had a very short phone call before this meeting where she pointed something out that I guess was aware of on one level, but hadn't fully considered. When we look at the summary report that we started our meeting with, we're looking at combined sales and property tax revenue and expenses. But in fact, the provisions of Measure Y tell us that we have a baseline of property tax expenses that we cannot drop below. And so even if we were to authorize Myrna to do further investigation, we have to be prepared for the fact that we might not be able to make as large an additional contribution as we might otherwise want to. But Barbara, in answer to your concern, I came away thinking that initially we should focus on trying to use just property tax revenues and not to get into the issue of, gee, would we be inappropriately using sales tax revenues? Tom, you raised an excellent point about the possible costs and complications of a 115 trust, and I'm not sold on whether in fact that's the most prudent approach. The presentation that we got from CalPERS a number of months ago was in fact specifically about the opportunity to utilize their 115 trust. There are 115 trusts available from some other organizations, and they're cited in the Bartel Associates report. So although that was my initial inclination, I'm not sold on it. And what I would hope, if we could reach some feeling among us as a committee, is that the commission as a whole could undertake the question and authorize Myrna to do a more extensive investigation into how much we would be able to allocate as additional payments over a period of time and the benefits of 115 trust versus direct payments to CalPERS. Dave?
Yeah, I'm with Tom. Frankly, my dear, I don't understand investment strategy at all. I'm just happy my Social Security check continues to arrive. What I will do, I certainly think that Myrna ought to look further into this. I will send her and you, Andy, copies of the press coverage from about the Santa Rosa not going with 115 trusts. And there's some references in there that might be useful to follow up. So I'll do that in the next few days.
That would be great, Dave. And I'm just going to say, and again, I'm not sold on it. My real hope is that we just encourage Myrna to pursue the investigation. But there are different investment strategies available within the range of 115 trusts, everything from more aggressive to quite conservative. And that's separate and apart from the issue of, gee, what are the fees and administrative costs and time and effort required? So I think those are all questions to look into further. Barbara?
Yeah, I think that how much we can do is the essential question. And then we have a separate question of, do we pay it as extra payments to CalPERS or put it in a trust? But to really to sort out, because I mean, it matters, but I mean, really the question to find out is how much, can we appropriately do? And I'd like to get back just to what you said, Andy, because I wasn't sure I understood it. If we look at our statement of special fund activity, just from today's meeting, the undesignated, unreserved ending fund balance for property tax is just a hair under $10 million. What comment were you making about our floor just a few minutes ago about, I don't know, I didn't understand how that worked. I mean, it's.
Seems like.
Go ahead.
Seems like we have ample resources, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm gonna turn this over to Myrna because she raised the concern and you've got a question up. So Myrna, why don't you jump in here?
Okay. So you mentioned the statement of special fund activity. Right now, what we have for you fiscal year 21-22 is estimated available for budgeting, right? So you have your beginning available for budgeting at the beginning of the year, 9.8 million. And then you take into consideration your revenues and expenditures, meaning here you see that you're using $3.3 million to balance the property tax fund budget. Expenditures are greater than the revenues. So that is taken into account, and you have the beginning balance of 9.8 minus the 3.3 million, you get 6.5 million available for budgeting. So this is a snapshot of where we are with the fund balance under property tax. Fast forward into the budget workshop, which are additional commitments that were requested from this committee to adopt a capital improvement plan and program, to set aside reserves for IT resources, facilities maintenance, repairs, and replacement of capital assets that include vehicles. So we're doing all of that. Those are going to be reserves that further reserve, that's for sake of discussion, that's $6.5 million. So therefore, after all of that, all those reserves have been accounted for, how much then do you have left available for budgeting that would be available for these decisions, any other decisions that the commission would make? They could commit those funds. Now we can say that historically, property tax has outperformed the estimates that have been budgeted for revenue. So if historically we've seen that, whatever surplus there may be, then that's reverted and quote unquote replenishes the fund balance. So we don't know what that's going to look like. The April receipts will give us a good estimate of how we'll be ending the year. But until then, this is what the information we have.
So I'm gonna jump in here, Myrna, if I may. And I like, Barbara, I appreciate your suggestion. And I think here's what I would like to propose to this committee, if you're amenable. I think the question of, gee, how much is available? How much would we even be talking about? Should take precedence over, should we make an additional payment, and should it be to a 115 trust or to CalPERS generally? It sounds like, Myrna, you're not going to be in a position to really zero in on that number until we're a little, until we've received the April property taxes and you're farther along in the budget process. Is that right?
Well, we'll know where we are, have a good estimate absent the April receipts at the budget workshop.
Okay.
You're still going to be to the good. There will still be a fund balance, and I think that my plan is to have a statement like this at the budget workshop, so that you can see what we are projecting to have available for budgeting next year. And that's April 1st. Again, we still are waiting for our April receipts. The other thing that I'd like to point out is right now you're looking at the pension, but the commission has already adopted a 115 trust for OPEB.
Right.
That when Bartel presented to you all, it showed the benefits of having a 115 trust. At the time, if and when the markets slow down and the cost of health benefits is higher than what the library can pay for, you tap into your trust fund to smooth out those gaps. There were some clear graphs in Bartel's presentation of when the library would use the lien on the 115 trust. So that means if you have a trust that you can tap into, that's wonderful. Otherwise, the cost is still there and the library is still obligated to make payments. And then that's where the difficult decisions are, to have to reduce services to make those obligated payments. That is what those 115 trusts are there for. So there were, if you can recall, and maybe you could go back to the Bartel report to see those analyses. And so I did want to say that you already have a 115 trust on OPEB. We had a presentation today by CalPERS on it, and all of CalPERS strategies have met or exceeded the expectations. So far, still good. Our economy is doing well. Our markets are doing well. And again, overall, in our audits also show, our financial audits, that our assets have grown because of the performance in our 115 trust. So just it's another benefit. And we do have more control over those funds than as opposed to paying CalPERS directly.
So let me ask you this, Myrna. As you look ahead to both the receipt of tax revenues and the budget process, when would you feel comfortable getting back to this committee with an estimate in line with what Barbara's asked for? The amount of money that we could reasonably commit over, say, a 4 or 5 year period.
I'm looking at my calendar. Let's see how lucky we are.
Okay.
Your finance committee is on the 18th.
Right.
So we should be seeing payments coming in, that the first couple of weeks of April, posted April 15th. So I'm not sure, how much we'll be able to see on the 18th. I mean, if you'd like, we could contemplate, moving the finance committee to, if we wanted to see, it wouldn't be part of your monthly report, but we could, they would have hit our books, our financial system, so we can see what those payments are.
So I'm just, if we were to, I'm just looking at the calendar. If we were to move the finance committee meeting back 1 week to April 25th, do you think you would have a clearer view of property tax receipts and be in a position to report to us about potentially what could be available should we choose to go in the direction of making additional discretionary payments?
Yeah, I'd have to, again, check, double check to see when normally they post last year. You know,
Okay.
historically, I can't tell you that right now, but I would see that. And then, you know, you as the chair can determine if you would like to move the date of the finance committee.
Oh, okay, so let me ask this then. I really appreciate that, and I understand now. The commission meeting is on May 2nd, so that would leave only, if we were to do that, it would leave only a week between the finance committee meeting and the commission meeting, which means that Jen or whomever follows her would need to turn our minutes around really quickly, and we'd all have to review them. But and I don't think we need to make a decision today, but based on what Myrna learns, if it were to turn out that moving the finance committee meeting back a week would enable her to have the information she needed to report to us in more detail about the possibility of additional discretionary payments and what amount might be available, is there any member of the committee who would be opposed to moving the meeting under those circumstances? Tom, you are.
Well, I'm not sure I'm opposed. I've got to have a better understanding of what the advantage is. Because I think you're saying we need to decide how much we have. I think what the commission needs to decide is putting more money aside for the retirement benefits, something we should try to do. I think that's something that whatever happens in the budget, we need to decide this is something we want to look forward to in the future, or the commission thinks we should just do nothing. And I think we need to cross that threshold before we start jumping through too many hoops on where are we going to get the money, and are we going to go with a 115 trust, or we're just going to give it to CalPERS and things like that, because there'll be a lot of investigation. I see that going on for 6 months if we actually have a feeling that we want to do it. So I'm not sure that there's an advantage to putting it off for a week, because we're just not going to run in there and make it happen quickly.
I have a comment on that, actually, is because we're speaking right now, the use of fund balance, which right now your OPEB is coming out of operations. So your operating revenue, we take a $750,000 annually to pay for the OPEB trust payment, to make that payment. What I'm hearing is that the committee is considering using fund balance. If that's the case, it's nice to have as part of the budget, but it's not necessary. It is not going to affect your operating revenues. So therefore, it's not necessary to make a quick decision if the commission feels they need more time for review and study.
So Barbara, I'm going to get to you in a second, but let me follow up on that for a second, Myrna, because I don't, thank you for reminding us that OPEB, the additional OPEB payments coming out of operating expenses, is the implication that should we if the commission decided that it was beneficial to make additional discretionary payments, would they have to come out of fund balance, or could they also be included as part of a budget process?
Yeah, it's up to the board to decide, where that would like to come. If you'd like a recommendation from staff, pretty much we're done with the budget, and we have to get it out because we have less than we have
Right.
a week, but we need to prep it and get it, publish it early next week. So we are pretty much done with the budget. Like I said, it's just final tweaks. So as part of a budget process and finding payments from your operating revenues would be some very important policy decisions of the board.
Right, but it sounds like it could either come from fund balance or from an amended budget, either source.
Theoretically, yes.
Yeah, okay. And Tom, I hear you're saying, and this is I want to acknowledge this is just a different priority. Barbara was saying, hey, let's figure out if we have any money available before we go further. And you're saying, I think the reverse, which is let's figure out if we want to pursue this before we get too worried about how much money is available. Barbara, I saw you had a hand up. Do you have an additional comment?
Well, I was concerned about the timing back to the, changing the meeting. I mean, according to my notes here in my calendar, the budget review and regular meeting is, just 1 week later. And I think, Myrna was helpful in her comments about that. And just as a reminder, when we did the OPEB trust, we used both. We did $3 million out of the fund balance at the general fund. And then we also set a policy to take money out of the operating expense. And I think policies are great because then you don't have to, discuss it every year. It's really nice to have a solid policy. So I think, as Tom was saying, it takes a little bit of time to draft that and think about it. But I think it's still important to know, what if we don't have any money to even think about. I mean, that's kind of like the essential issue. So I'm kind of a mind, just because I think it'd be helpful to know how strong the property taxes are coming in. I don't think it makes any difference, except to, Jen or whoever has to do the minutes, to set the meeting, a week later and then see what we have. So we're just as well prepared as we possibly can be for that meeting on the first week of May, when we're going to talk about, really review the budget.
So, okay, I'm going to take everything under advisement. Let me ask a final question. In some way, I think it's important that we share the Bartel information with the full commission. I was not overwhelmed with the presentation that we got, and felt that if anything, there was a lack of clarity around the big picture that we would need to make decisions. How does May 2nd seem as a date? And I could work with Myrna to put together a presentation on this for the full commission, with the question of, should we look at making additional payments? How does that timing seem?
Myrna, is that enough time for you?
Oh, is that for me?
I mean, it's
No,
for
no,
everybody.
I'm more
it's for
than
everybody.
happy to work on a presentation
Okay.
to get the salient points across to the commission.
I think April 4th seemed way too soon, given the fact that the budget workshop is April 1st. But given, regardless of when we have the next finance committee meeting, given that we should have information about property tax receipts, will be farther along in the budgeting process, feels like May 2nd would be a reasonable date to share the findings of the Bartel study and to bring up the possibility of additional discretionary payments. Does that seem reasonable? Dave, I see you've got your hand up. You're on mute.
I believe that the commission would be better served if they got a coherent recommendation from this committee before they try to discuss it. Frankly, I'm not sure how many other commissioners are following that closely. This is awe-inspiring in its complexity, and I'm afraid we probably could easily have a split commission, which I don't want to have on something of this magnitude. So I prefer to have, excuse me, have Myrna think about this and do some more research, and then come back to us. And then once we've got our act together, which we plainly don't, we should go to the commission and see what they have to say.
Okay. Thank you. Myrna, I see your hand is up. Do you have another
Oh.
comment, or you just didn't put it down?
I didn't put my hand down. Sorry.
Okay. I think, Dave, I'm gonna follow your advice here. Here's what I'm gonna suggest. Please allow me to connect with Myrna offline to work on some next steps. We'll determine if we should stick with the original date for the finance committee's next meeting, or should move it back a week to allow for a little more time to do this. But I'm perfectly willing to say, let us as a committee engage on this first before we try to share it with the commission. Deborah, do you have an objection to that?
No, thank you.
Tom, you object to that approach?
No, if people read the minutes and all this discussion is in the minutes, then I think that's there. What I want the commissioners to understand is this is an issue that's out there. And the more we say that it's an issue and this is some of the information, the better it is for everybody.
Okay, thank you. Barbara, are you okay also if we take that approach?
Yeah, I agree with it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I know we ran long on this. This is an exceedingly complex topic. The good news, I will say in summary, is in contrast to the situation you faced with OPEB, the situation is far from dire. So it's not like we're in an emergency response mode. But that said, I think we owe it to the staff and to future commissioners to examine this closely and do whatever we can to ensure a stable long-term financial approach for the library. So thank you for your thoughtful comments. That's the end of our agenda. I'm going to declare that the meeting is adjourned at 4:21. And we'll follow up with Myrna to let you know when the next meeting will be, either as scheduled or perhaps a week later. Thank you all, as usual, for just your great attention to these key issues and for your support of the library. I can only hope that the staff appreciates all the work you're doing to ensure that they will be paid now and in the future.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Andy.
Everybody.
Yeah.
Good night.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.